was lucky to get in there within 2 weeks and have the valve put in, and they don't have to do open heart surgery. It goes up through the groin, and they just put it inside the old one is what they do. Very successful.
Glad to see you back.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to feel good again, I'll tell you.
Mark, you're mute.
Hi there. Sorry to be a minute late. And forgive the loud background noise. My printer is going haywire right now. Janet, it's nice to see you.
Thank you. Same here.
You came in very late, so I'm glad you're back in action here.
Yes, thank you.
I am going to call the meeting to order. And I want to start with reading the right to know law meeting checklist. I think, Neil, that it's proper for me to continue doing this now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me. As chair of the Hopkinton Budget Committee, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. There's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to the meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we're providing public access to the meeting by telephone and with additional access possibilities by Zoom for this meeting. All members of the committee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom platform. And the public has access to listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by dialing in 646-558-8656. And the meeting ID is 892-1128-8232. So one more time. Dial in 646-558-8656 with the meeting ID 892-1128-8232, or you can click on the Zoom link, which is up on the town website. We've given notice to the public of how to access the meeting using Zoom, and the instructions are on the town's website at www.hopkinton-nh.gov and on our Facebook page. If you have any problems during the meeting, please call 603-746-8242, or you can email Neil at townadmin@hopkinton-nh.gov. All votes of the meeting will be taken during roll call, and so we'll start with a roll call attendance, and I'm just going to go around the horn. Just to comply with right to know law, please let me know if there's anyone else in the room with you during this meeting. So let me start with Janet.
Ken,
Did you say Janet or Ken?
Janet.
Janet Krasaniak, and I'm alone in the my room.
Great. Ken.
Ken Trauman, I'm also alone.
Great. Steve.
Steve Reddy, and I am alone.
Norm.
Norm Gupel, I am not alone. My 15-year-old, 16-year-old son's like 2 feet away. Is that a problem? Okay.
Future budget committee member. Don.
Don Houston, home alone.
And Thomas.
Tom Sapom is here, and he is alone.
I think we're missing two folks, but let me call their names. Ginny Haynes is not here, and Rich Houston, not here.
Jonathan Cohen.
So we'll see if, and Jonathan Cohen, thank you, Tammy. Okay, so we have a few folks missing. Hopefully some of them will join along the way. And I know that the notice for this meeting was, came out only recently. Let's go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Ken, I wonder if you would be willing to lead us in the pledge.
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the United
of the
States of
United States of
America
America.
and to the
And
republic
to the
States
republic
of America.
for which it stands,
stands one nation,
nation,
under God,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty, and
liberty,
justice
and
for all.
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Thank you.
So Mark, if it's okay with you, I'm going to make you the host,
Sure.
and you should be all set.
Okay.
And I wish you a good meeting.
I just
Enjoy
felt-
your dinner, Neil.
I just felt a surge of adrenaline run through my body.
Oh, good. Hey, you're in charge. You can mute anyone you want. Have a good night.
Someone just,
Bye.
Okay, great. Well, let's start with the July 15th, 2020 minutes. Thank you, Tammy. These have previously been sent out, and I guess I'd invite a motion in a second to approve the minutes, and then we can see if there's anything to talk
Okay.
about.
I'll move we approve the July 15th, 2020 minutes.
Okay, Ken has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, I don't know who did that. I'm gonna
Who
go
was-
with Norm.
someone who was there.
Norm was there, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, are there any comments or clarifications or questions? Norm, go ahead.
Yes. So I apologize. They don't have, they're all say page 6, but it said Norm Goupel discussed the history of where they are now and what happened. He explained that in the beginning, they had an increase of 4.3 million on the operating account. It should be 4.3%.
Okay, so page number?
Yeah, yeah. I printed it out, Tammy. I'm so sorry. It says presentation of amendment proposed Hopkinton School District budget. Norm Goupel. It's the 4th paragraph down.
Okay, I gotta find it. There we go. Norm Guppo. Something happening. Okay, Norm Guppo, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3.
So instead of it being 4.3 million, it should be 4.3%, 2.53%, and 1.80%. Not million.
If you can send me,
Oh, yeah, okay, it's on page 11, Tammy.
okay, 10, I see 11.
Bottom of page 11 where it
Okay, there we
says
go,
that it
there we go,
increased to 4.3.
4.3. So 4.3 percent and 2.53% and 1.8.
Yeah, percent.
Okay.
Thank you, Norm. That's a
Thank
good
you.
catch.
Thank you guys for bearing with me.
That's all right.
Anything else, Norm?
No, that was the only big thing that I wanted to address. Thank you.
That would be good. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on the minutes? All right, so then I'm gonna take the roll for approval of the July 15th, 2020 minutes. I'll start with Steve.
Approved.
Okay, and Norm?
Based on the change we just did?
Yes,
Okay.
with the amendment that you,
Okay.
yes, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, sir. Norm Goupel is a yes.
Janet,
Janet Krasaniak is a yes.
Don,
Don Houston's a yes.
Ken,
Yes.
and Thomas,
Thomas is a yes.
and Mark Zankella is a yes. Okay, great. We're gonna move then to the town financials, but as you kind of before you get going, Ken, I just want to say, and I know recognizing that the meeting came together somewhat late, and we will talk about our meeting schedule going forward under the other business. But it will make Tammy's life a lot easier or much less difficult, at least that way, if any of the financial and other sort of updates that we go through during the budget committee meeting are sent to her in advance. Thank you, Ken, for doing that. Again, this is not a critique of the current meeting, but more just going forward as she's trying to take minutes and track things. If she has those financials, especially because we're in Zoom, and she doesn't have the paper in front of her that would be handed out, it just makes her life a bit better. So that's my request to all of you who are giving financial reports.
Thank you.
And Tammy, you received the two summary sheets?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Case, so am I up now, Mark? Okay. You all would have received, I believe, probably this morning, the summary revenue and expense reports through the end of August, which for us is 2/3 of the way through the year. And is really nothing that's surprising, considering we, try to be consistent when we got approval for the budget not that long ago. And these summary pages do reflect the most recently approved budget. So that's what the comparison is against. On the revenue side, whereas it looks like we're running well below what you'd expect at the 2/3 point of the year, most of that is simply due to timing, whether it's payment of pilot taxes or payment from the state. The state generally pays near the end of the calendar year. So there's really nothing that's an issue on the revenue side. Motor vehicles are running a little bit higher than budgeted, so that's great. So hopefully on that side, the revenues will come in a little bit better than what we had budgeted previously. Are there any questions on the revenue side? Okay. On hearing none on the expense side, again, I think we're running slightly better than what we had budgeted for. And where it shows that we've spent roughly 65% of our budget through 2/3 of the year, I want to just note that within that is $72,000 that's actually COVID grant, and that will get pulled out because that's 100% reimbursable and it's not a budget item. So we're actually spent about 64% of the budget, giving us a little more flexibility. At this point, we're not seeing anything that's of concern. On the expenses, is there any questions I can answer? Okay.
Sorry. Mark, do you want us to raise hands or just talk?
I think let's just try talking, and then if it turns out we have too much talking over each other, we'll go with the hand raising. So go ahead, Thomas.
Sounds good. I got one, I think, quick question on the expenses, and then if I can ask another question on the revenue side. So you mentioned that there is extra expenses of about $72,000 for COVID stuff. That's the emergency management line item. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you said that, so that's currently just an expenditure in there that will eventually get reimbursed, or it has been reimbursed?
Will be.
Okay. And then if I can ask another question on the revenue side, what's the highway block grant? Where does that come from? Where does it go to?
That comes from the state, and it's
Okay.
used for highway. It's one of our funds that is used for highway purposes.
Okay, so that goes basically straight into road maintenance. Can it go to any roads, or does it have to go to specific roads?
I think it just goes into the pot for roads.
Okay.
Okay.
Ken, where are we with the road bond? I think
Okay.
the road bond has been issued and starting to be spent, or is this a previous road? What's the road bond that's here on the expenses side?
That that was the previous road bond that we're about spent down on. And what I wanted to just mention to people is we have not yet issued the new road bond, the 1.8 million that had been approved at the last town meeting vote. The expectation is that we'll issue that in probably the January, February timeframe, going through the municipal bond bank. We don't know the interest rate on it yet, but where we had used 2.25% in the proposals that were approved, we think it could be as low as 1%. And we're also seriously, well, we're planning to refinance the what's left of the balance to be paid of the first road bond as well as the fire station bond, thus bringing the interest rates from those down from about 2.5% and 3.5% respectively down to in the area of 1% without changing the maturities. And that's just, you know, at the 1,000-foot level, we won't know any more specifics for quite a while.
Thank you. Other questions for Ken? Hearing none. Kenneth, you're off the hook.
Okay, I won't eat yet. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks. Okay, Norm, we just acknowledged that the school just got its budget. And the school, I just want to say, like, you know, for those who, probably everyone knows, but for those of us with kids in the school system, we really know. I mean, the administration has had a very complicated set of activities on its hands for the last month in trying to figure out how they can safely and effectively teach our kids this year. And so I didn't feel like it was necessary to demand that the school produce financials right now, given what they've had to, the things they've had to spend their time on, and that they just got their budget approved. But Norm, any update that you feel like you'd like to share would be most welcome.
Yes, I have a list. And before I start, I just want to say, you know, Janet, welcome back. It's really, really great to see you. And I owe you something for your birthday when you get back and we're in person, something sweet.
Thank you.
I haven't forgotten. So,
Thank you.
You know, first, I want to say, you know, thank you to the town of Hopkinton for, you know, approving our budget, and to this budget committee for working with us through the whole process. You know, it was, I think, a good time for the community to really, you know, be part of this budgeting process, to understand and to ask questions, and to really get the information that they've been asking for. So I want to say thank you to all of you here who was part of that process, and to my fellow board mates for all their help and really working with the town on a budget. And I want to say thank you to Steve and Michelle for the endless hours it took to really put this together for the district. So I have a couple things I'd like to discuss with you guys that's been going on in the school district that I think is important. We have been meeting almost on a regular basis every Thursday ever since COVID has started, from budget to getting our students back into school. We are on a bunch of finance committee, bunch of different committees, from negotiations, CIP. It goes on and on, and it's an honor to make a difference in the community, and that's why we're here. Moving forward, you know, now that we have an approved budget, we are working on getting our students back into school, and we have to start working at some point on our future budget now that this has been approved. Next week, the Finance Committee will be meeting, Rob and we will be discussing state and federal grants, and then we'll be discussing the budget planning and communication information format. The Finance Committee has been a real good tool, I feel, for the board and for the community to get questions answered more in detail. I sent a couple of you a link on how the $641,000 was spent. We broke it down in a 1 hour video, sharing with the community how it worked, and it really helped people understand the process. I'm happy to send that to Deb to send to all of you, so you guys can be informed and understand how that works, because it was one of those things where a lot of people were thrown out on Facebook saying that it was just absorbed in the budget, and we took the time, Rob and I and Steve and Michelle, to really set some time aside and explain to the community how that worked in our budgeting process. And moving forward, we plan on doing that for other things. You know, we want to discuss how federal grants work in state, and basically make a glossary for the community that if they want to have a question about how something works, here's a link, here's how it's done, just to be able to communicate and open up our way of communicating with them. So I'm happy to send that video to Deb to circulate to you guys, just so you guys could see. If there's a specific question down the road that we're doing in the Finance Committee that this Budget Committee would love to know more about, that we dissect, I'm happy to send that to you guys, because I really want to open up that level of communication and to all of you. So did you guys have any questions before I continued on that?
I would like a copy of that video.
Absolutely. I will send it to Deb. Yes, I will send it to Deb, and then I'll have her circulate it to the committee.
Yeah, when you mention it in the minutes, then you probably have to send a link so I can send a link to everyone.
Yes. Link and Deb, and I'll send it to her.
And then, yeah, she'll send it to me.
Perfect. So I'm going to run down a couple things that's happened in the district quite a bit since we last met. Just recently, this is a financial impact, but zero base. We agreed in the budget that we would not have assistant coaches, and that was something that was very important. You know, when we go through a budgeting process, we commit to what we are.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's a great song. But since COVID hit, we've had to make an adjustment to have protection for our additional athletes. So our coaches, head coaches, have taken a reduction in salary, and the assistants will get a little bit of their paid salary in order to participate part of the season. The season's about 6 weeks, and in order to accommodate the safety checks for our athletes, we need to have someone that is there to do temperature checks and all the other stuff COVID related in order to have a successful season. So I just wanted to let you guys know that the coaches have agreed to a lower base salary, which was approved in the budget, and the differences go into the assistant coaches in order to have that be part of the season. The next thing that I was informed about last week, which I've asked Steve to unpack in our next Finance Committee meeting so I could understand better, was a return of surplus from the health insurance pool. Because healthcare was not used last year due to COVID, there was a surplus of $150,151.96. So the Health Trust Board voted to return the surplus to the members institution. So the district will receive this money, and the proceeds will return to the members as a refund on the premium that's been paid. These funds will be part of the revenue picture in the tax setting. This unexpected revenue comes at a one-time reduction in anticipation for food service revenue that's necessary. And this is due to the structure of the school lunch program. So the tax rate doesn't change, just they decided, the board last week, since we had a low budget amount for food services, that we were able to make an adjustment with that. So Steve's going to break this down for the community so they understand the $150,000 that came back and how it's a surplus because they're required to give it back to us because it was unused healthcare costs. And we should be having a discussion about that in our next finance committee meeting regarding this surplus that's been returned to us. Does anyone have any questions about that?
Norm, the what you're talking about with the Primex refund,
Yes.
the town had received much smaller dollars, but it was, for us, it was built in already into the projections. I've been curious. I don't understand. I hear things that the federal government is going to pay for lunches for students for all students through the rest of the year. Can you shed any light on that?
It's a good question. I haven't heard that. I can look into that to see if the government is indeed helping with that. It could be in the form of a grant potentially, but I do not know the answer, and I'm happy to look in that and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just
And-
make a note because I'll totally forget.
Okay, and just for your benefit and the rest of the committee, Steve Chamberlain addressed Rotary, explaining everything that's transpired during the year and all of the work that the whole school team and both school boards have done, and just have to really commend you all for
Thank you.
what efforts you had to put in.
Same with you guys. You guys have been very busy, and I've been watching. You guys are doing a lot. I think everyone in town's doing the best we can. From this committee to our taxpayers being respectful by wearing gear when they go out. So we're all doing our best. So I will look into that question for you. One thing that was important that happened since our last meeting was our auditor told us we had an additional $225,000 on the unreserved balance once they closed the books. We were notified that from our auditor that we had this additional funds. So the board had a meeting and we discussed what we wanted to do with that. We decided to use $45,106 of it to go towards bleacher repairs, which was part of the CIP. So that now gives us more room in our CIP to grow out for additional things. And then we had some more, what's the word, cathodic protection at Harold Martin for $8,450. That's used for some metal stuff and some infrastructure stuff. The most important one of this is that we invested $171,000 into technology for our students. So from 4th grade up, we essentially have a Chromebook for each student, which makes it very important for the district that if we do end up going full remote, we have the technology to provide for our students. Of course, our goal is to go back to school, but it's important that we have this opportunity for our students to have something in case something happens, that no one's left behind. It's possible for them, if they have a laptop, that they can buy it out at some point during the term of having this laptop, because this laptop would grow with them. So if you're a 4th grader, 5th, 6th, and the buyout on a laptop, once you get to 6, 7, it can be very minimal. But it's something that I'm proud to say the board agreed to do, was to buy these laptops these Chromebooks, I'm sorry, back then, because lead time on equipment right now is long. We still have not received them, unfortunately, from my understanding. Steve anticipated a pallet coming in this Monday, but it was of the cases. So I hope we get them soon. Matt's been waiting for them, but I wanted to make it clear to the committee that we had an additional $225,000 and that we allocated to important things in the district for the kids, for stuff that was in the CIP for the bleachers, and gave us some room.
Hey, Norm, could I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
Are you saying that you bought The district bought a Chromebook for every student.
It's
Grades-
my understanding from fourth grade up, they'd have enough
Even if the
Chromebooks.
student doesn't need that, because, I mean, a lot of kids have laptops, so why would we buy for people who may not need it?
They have some Chromebooks that can be used also for the, if like third grade or second graders need one and all that. So they were able to use them down there, but I don't know the number, how many they bought, but I know that was the plan of doing that with 171,000 was to buy enough. How many?
Norm, I have a question.
Sure.
I guess I'm not following something.
Yeah,
The town voted on a budget for the
correct.
schools.
Yep.
Are you saying you're now going to be spending 200,000 more than that?
No, this
Approved
is after,
budget?
this was after the budget's been, this is when we were closing our books. Our auditor said we had an additional 225,000 left from the unreserved balance. So that our fiscal, our end of the year is June 30th. So what happened is that our auditor took our books and they found 225,000 in there. And they told us that we treated it as if it was the same way as if at the end of the year we can allocate the funds. And we did that where, since it was important for us for COVID related, we took an investment into our laptops for that. And then we decided to help with our CIP planning to give us some pressure off that and purchasing something for the bleachers, which was needed.
So you're saying you're applying it against last fiscal year?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, that's.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We would not be, no, we would not be using money that was, for this budget. Be very clear about that.
Okay, thank you.
No, you're welcome. So as you know, the board has put money aside for COVID related expenses based on our last time we met. We had set some aside from the last meeting. As of right now, to date, we have spent about $40,000 to $50,000 on masks, hand sanitizers, gloves, desks, nurses, PPE, and electros, static sprayers. As of right now, we're ready to go back to school. We've made the necessary changes in order to be safe for our students. And there's a lot that goes into this plan that we've spent many hours on. But as of right now, we have spent $40,000 to $50,000 on that. One thing that was really great to hear from the state level, about a month ago, Andrea attended a meeting. They had a change in the required tax rate stabilization fund. This went from a 2.5 to a 5%. So instead of having the max capacity at 2.5, it's now at 5. And the restrictions on what that money can be used has been removed. So next year, if there's a surplus, we can, I think it's title, I forget which title, is it title 10? We can maximize with 5% if we wanted to as a board instead of 2.5. So the state has given us an increase on that for tax stabilization. So probably one of the big ticket things I wanted to discuss with you guys tonight was the facility project. I'm proud to say that the facility project has been going very well, and it's been great to oversee it for this great community, and that we are getting a lot of stuff done in each building. At the high school, we finished on August 31st, 6 bathrooms renovated, locker rooms have been renovated, and access has changed. So you're not going into the girls' locker room to get to a specific closet. So that's been changed, which is great. The main office has been renovated to include space for the teachers now. The roofs are nearly complete. They're working on a couple additional leaks that they're narrowing it down to. And we have moved and renovated 2 classrooms in the elevator hallway is created. So they're all done right now at the high school. They finished up on August 31st, except for a couple leaks that they're working on right now. Over at Maple Street, the construction has finished on August 31st. The only thing they're working on is the ramp. The ramp at Maple Street will be complete by September 20th. So we may have 1 week or so where it's not going to be able to be used. 2 bathrooms were renovated. Bathroom and entrance to the guidance counselor has been renovated, and roof repairs are going to be done very soon. They're now moving out of Maple Street, and they're focusing all their attention right now at Harold Martin. The foundation has started Harold Martin for the addition. It's looking great over there. I was over there today. It's important that BPS is practicing safety procedures of COVID, which is something that's very important. As part of the facility committee, I believe it's very important that if we're going to have students returning, BPS is following the procedure of wearing a mask while working on school property. And that's also based on our current policy that the board passed last week regarding wearing a mask while on school property. So I think one thing I wanted to share with you guys that I thought was really important was when this whole facility project started, one of the most important things that I had heard over and over again was fire suppression norm. And I firmly believed in that when I started on the board. Was I want to protect our schools. I want to protect the investment of the taxpayers, but it's a board decision, in which I'm pleased to say the board approved fire suppression at Harold Martin. The facility group has worked really well with Chief Yale on this project, and it's need to be decided on pretty much quickly in July. The reason for that is we are always looking for an opportunity to receive grants from the state. We have the opportunity to receive $60,000 from the state as part of the fire suppression. Way back when this was initially talked about, we were told it would be a $1.5 million to do fire suppression, and that didn't even like get close to that. So the totals for fire suppression, let me get my little handy dandy sheet right here. The total for everything is $407,769. We're going to receive $60,000 from the state. We saved quite a bit of money without having to have a fire door, which was $15K, and we are also having saving $15,000 on moving the tank to the garage since it will be horizontal. We also saved a little bit of money from using PVC instead of copper at Harold Martin. So there's a lot of things that has brought this down to saving some money while we're working on this project. And that is something that we're always looking at. We're looking at grants from the state, because if something's out there that we can use, that we can add some savings to the bond, we're currently always looking at that. So to give you a breakdown on that, I can happily send that to you guys. I just received it today at 4 o'clock. I had a meeting. I asked Gordon Bristol, our operations manager, to send us some information on what the cost of the fire suppression was, because I think it was very important for this community to know that this is an adult to the project. It's our first one, but I also think it's probably the most important adult, in my opinion, to protect our schools and our students and our investment. We do have other adults we will discuss when the time is right. We just have not got there yet, because it's important for us to really break through ground, see what our contingency is, and to continue to monitor the project, making sure there's no issues. It's important to understand two important elements for this, in my opinion, is we have a fourth classroom, which is coming at the way of the design, which is great, and then fire suppression, which I think is a bonus being able to allocate for this project.
Norm, could I ask you a question about that fire?
Yeah, please.
Just to make sure I understand, the
Yeah.
fire suppression investment in Harold is going to be made through the facilities bond?
That is correct, sir.
And that 400,000, let's say less the 60 coming from the state,
Yep.
where does that, is that displacing something else that was part of the package of the facilities bond that was presented to voters, or is it, where does that money, where does
So
that money come at the expense of, if anything?
So you said so when we did a bid out to all the bids for the project, we submitted out additional adults that we needed. And so we got a specific number on the project, and Gordon Bristol, who's been monitoring this project, has told us where we have for a total value on adults and stuff. And we prioritized them in a meeting. And we had to jump the gun, Mark, on the fire suppression because we would have lost out on the 60,000 potentially from the state. The reason for that, and I appreciate asking this question, is because the pump takes a long time to get, and the lead time on that is significantly long, and this has to be working or set up to go by the end of the year. So we've been in touch with the Department of Ed regarding this grant, so we don't miss the boat on getting the 60 grand from them. This is outside the scope of the bond that was promised to the taxpayers. But I can tell you that everything that's been promised to the taxpayers is going just fine right now through this facilities project. But this adult, the board felt strong. We need to protect our schools. Talking to Chief Yale, he firmly believed it also. And we've been in constant communication with them. So
you're basically saying we can do this within the amount of money that the
absolutely
to borrow for the facilities bond. So that's good. That's great.
The only thing that we have to CIP for this to be open with you guys is that we have to put in the CIP about $150,000 for a generator, and that's a big chunk of change for us to add into the facilities project because we have a bunch of soft costs and a bunch of additional stuff that we have to look once we start breaking ground more in the classrooms. But we wanted to get this going so we could get the grant for this project, and I'm very happy and I'm very blessed that the school board approved this because I really think it's important that we protect our investment that we're paying for the next 20 years and on. So I guess the last couple things I have to say is we're going back to school. And I think it's an exciting time. I know in this household and for many kids and for many parents that our students are going back to school, and I'm happy to say that the board and superintendents and our principals have worked hard to come up with a hybrid model. We've worked together as a team and with the community and listened to their feedback to put forward a plan that we feel is best for kids and also works for our teachers because we want our teachers and our students safe. It's important for everybody. Last week, the board reached an agreement with the teachers for their health and safety to go back to school. Once we voted on it last night, it became public, which was a document that was revealed to the community that set guidelines for each teacher for what was agreed upon with the board. The last thing to report, and I'm sorry I've said so much, Mark, it's just a lot's happened in each week, is, and I saved the best for last because, Steve means a lot to us, is our superintendent search is underway. We have agreed to work with the firm, Hazard & Young. The amount for that is about $15,000 for us to use them. We start our meeting with them next Wednesday at 5 p.m. It is open to the public, but I am almost certain that after the public, we will be going into non-public, of course, to talk about some things that will be for personnel. So that is the update I have from the school. I appreciate everyone being patient. I had a lot of notes here, and I apologize for that. The plan is for me to provide financials to Tammy moving forward, and any documentation I have, I will gladly send to her. I usually write my notes down so I'm clear and I have it in my head. But that's all I have for right now. I'm here to answer any questions the best I can, and if I don't, I'll get them for you.
Thanks, Norm. That was a great update. Any questions for Norm?
No, I just would like to say I appreciate Norm's willingness to be very open with us. And I am very pleased with the school board because I think they all are trying very hard to be open and let people know what's going on and being very transparent. They've always considered that they have been transparent, but I've been here a long time, too long probably. And this board is completely different. So I want to thank Norm for sharing with us and being willing to find out when he doesn't know. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other comments or questions for Mr. Goupel? Norm, getting off easy. You deserve that.
Hope it's like
okay.
this tomorrow night. It's nice and easy tomorrow night.
Yeah, all right. Great, thank you, Norm. All right, let's switch over. Don, do you have an update from the precinct?
Yes, I do. And again, I think I agree with Janet's comments. This is a fantastic new board with open information. It's fantastic. And I also really like to hear that the fire suppression system is part of the plan. I spoke about that 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm glad it's come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
We finally had our annual meeting on Monday, August 25th for the village precinct. We had one person from the audience, and you might guess who that might have been. It was Norm. And he was the only other person other than the precinct commissioners and the staff. But our budget got passed unanimously. And there's really nothing new. July is the last report I had, and we're basically on schedule with our budget. The project to replace the pipe on Main Street on Linda Kimball's pasture is scheduled to be done and completed by this year. We're having trouble getting a contractor to do it still because everybody's so busy, but that has to be done this year. So that's the only outstanding item and the major focus of other than normal maintenance that's been going on with the precinct. I guess that's all I have to offer. Any questions?
Just a comment. I just want to say thank you for a great meeting, and I've enjoyed using precinct water for the first time since I've been here in Hopkinton. And I must say it's definitely different than a well water, but thank you for making the meeting public. It was a great time to go.
Thank you, Don.
Could you tell us the 3 commissioners, Don?
Yes, Chris Bodett is the chair.
Okay.
Tom Yastrzemski is the second. He's been there for a long, long time. And Mike Metcalf is now the third person replacing Bill Chapin Sr., who resigned and retired from that duty from a long time ago.
Okay.
Mike's is in the company that has been doing most of the engineering work for the precinct. He lives in Woodwell's Garrison, so he's, I think, a great addition because he sees the big picture from the engineering standpoint and certainly can offer great guidance to us there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else for Don? Thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
Thomas, you're up.
Yeah, so I didn't send anything over. Our financials are relatively compact, so I figured I would just talk through them. So we also had our precinct meeting, really low turnout again, very similar to the Kentucky Village. But we did also elect a new commissioner. So we have a new Kelly McCaskill is replacing Diana. So we're excited about that. In terms of the general financials, sorry?
Say it again. I didn't hear what
Kelly McCaskill is a new commissioner that got voted in.
Thank you.
So we also unanimously approved the budget, and so far all the numbers are right on track. By far the biggest portion of our budget is in lighting and utilities, which makes up close to $11,000. And right now we're at about $6,600. So we're kind of right on track on that. And that's kind of the majority of our budget, so it's relatively small. But the other big thing is the water project is going forward. I know that they've taken out one of the bonds. I don't believe they've taken out the other bond. I haven't had an update from them in a while. They operate kind of completely independently and are self-funded. So we're waiting to see what happens there. We know that the cost of the project when it came back from bid was a lot higher than they originally expected. So they're working through trying to figure out how to lower the cost before they do too much more. But the project itself has started, which is good. And that's pretty much it.
Any questions or comments on the Hopkinton precinct? All right, cruising right along here. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah.
So we would now have a public comment session, but sadly we're back to the days of no public attending. I'm sure that will change now as we get into the budget.
This is my first meeting with no public. This is wild.
So I will move us on to any other business to come before the board, and would welcome, I want to talk about meeting schedule, but before we get to that, would welcome anything else that anyone wants to bring forth at this point.
I guess the only thing that, this is not coming from the board per se, this is something that I wanted to talk to Ken about. Maybe at some capacity, before we start working on our budget, we can have a discussion, the two boards, about where we're kind of going with in our budgeting process. I always felt it was maybe good to have kind of I don't know if it's a joint meeting together or, you and Sabrina, me and Rob get together and kind of look at what our expectations and our plans are, before we dive into this budgeting process. What's kind of like, I don't know if that's something that's you'd be comfortable with bringing maybe to the select board. I haven't talked to the board about it. It's just something I was thinking about.
We normally have in the spring, a joint meeting between the two boards. If I think we run into if it would be two members of your board and two members of mine, it's a public meeting and it has to be minutes and advertised.
Yeah.
And all of that. So it would probably then just makes sense to have both boards there.
I'm happy with that. I think it'd be good to have it. Maybe this is my recommendation, not of the board, but maybe to have that sooner, so we can kind of maybe once we figure out what our budgeting thought process is. Or
Can I ask a follow-on to that, Norm?
Sure.
So this is something that I was wondering too, if in the past they had done, because it sounds like the school board this year, you guys are creating kind of a separate finance committee, which sounds like a really good way to help draft kind of that budget process. Correct. I was wondering, in the past, has there ever been a situation where members of the budget committee has joined in on something like that, so that you can have, because I mean, instead of having both of your boards talking together, we could have some of the members from the budget committee that could be on those kind of like subcommittees that are creating the budget, and then help kind of do some of that merging as it's going on before it gets back to us in the spring?
I think that's a great idea if both boards are open to that. I mean, we have Mark, am I on right business still? Bring this up at this time. I want to make sure I'm sticking
Absolutely.
to it. Okay. For me, I agree with you on that. Where my mind is right now is with the finance committee. We are working on a couple things. Like I had said, we're trying to figure out a new budget plan. This town has asked for some type of line by line item budget process, which we're taking to heart, and that we really want to get something to the school board on. It might make sense and I'm only one board member, to consider potentially having a budget committee member come on and maybe helping us find that budget format and find that specific number to bridge a gap between the two boards. I think that'd be a great idea. It helps with bringing communication to this committee, maybe oversight, whatever the two boards feel comfortable with. Times have changed. Let's be honest. You know, I'm happy to hear the comments from Don and Janet regarding, you know, the direction of maybe how things have been in the past. We have to respect the past. We learn from the past, but I'm a pretty open guy. You know, you guys know me. I'm happy to talk about anything with you guys. But Tom, I think that's a great idea. I'm not sure how we go about implementing that. I'm happy to work with that if that's something that's possible.
So I think that the way to implement it, if you want to, and I don't know that it has to be the same for both this. I mean, I think it's to some sense, it's at the discretion of the two boards. So for the school board, I think if you feel like it would be helpful to engage another, I mean, you are a school board's rep to the finance committee, Norm, so there's already an interface. But if you feel like it would be helpful, but you're a school board member, if you would think it would be helpful, or the board does, to have an additional non-school board member engaging more actively in the budget development process. I think that's a request that would come from the school board through you, the budget committee. And then we would appoint somebody or ask someone to raise their hand for it. And I think the same for the select board. I think it's a great idea if the school board is willing and interested, and then if there's somebody on the budget committee who's willing, is willing to step forward and fulfill that role. So that would be my perspective on how we would operationalize it if there was interest. But maybe we can keep going with the sort of reactions to the idea from other budget committee members.
On the select board side, we don't have a finance committee as such. In the past, Neil and I have taken the recommendations from this budget committee as well as from the rest of the select board and tried to produce something that was then presented to the full select board, so that it's, earlier in the process that I think the budget committee is, last year, say, provided input that wanted, no more than a 4% increase in the tax rate.
So I understand you guys don't have a finance committee, but do you think, for me, we're one tax rate, the whole town, the select board, school board, water precincts, all that. I'm trying to bridge the communication, and it's just me talking that, we're both working on a budget. When we get to the finish line, what's the expectations that you guys do on your end, what's on ours? Because if we're coming in with like a 2% and you guys are coming in with this, it has an overall tax impact for the town. And I'm just trying to bridge a way of being able to communicate that from the beginning. We haven't had a discussion on what our expectations are for an increase. It needs to happen soon, because if we're going to implement a new budgeting process, we got to be able to get the program. We got to be able to implement it so it's ready for this board and for the community, so they're able to see what they want to see. So it was just something I was thinking about, how we can communicate the process. I like Tom's idea. I'm only one person. I'm not the board, but I think that if we're able to, we have the budget committee for oversight for budgets, but again, times have changed. Can we make something different in order to?
Well, I would say, Norm, I would just encourage you to make better use of this committee too. I personally feel a little wary of creating new and additional structures.
Yep.
Everyone's a volunteer.
Yep.
You have a school board, you have a finance committee.
Yep.
You are welcome to invite a member of the budget committee, another member, to participate, one or more. And I think you can do that.
Yeah.
But the budget committee is a forum where you can share the school board's thinking on budget. Ken can share the select board's thinking on budget. Our challenge has been often that sharing comes pretty late.
Yeah.
And, for understandable reasons, for reasons that have often been explained but, this is a forum that exists already. So I just personally going to say I have a little bit wariness of like creating new structures that are outside the budget committee, which is one place where we should actually be doing this bridging. And that's one of the roles that we play is for us all as a budget committee to hear and see what the respective boards are thinking about, and then to provide guidance as well.
I see your point. I guess my recommendation, I'm only one board member, would be maybe the two boards need to meet before we start our budgeting process, Ken. And that'd be a place to start.
I can raise it. We certainly have not started the budget process yet for next year, and have no idea, where the board may want to try to come out. And, but I would say in part that that's a good reason that the budget committee could be giving direction, saying because of COVID we need a level tax rate again, or let's go to 5% because to make up for what happened last year. I don't know.
So you'd prefer to have the budget committee give direction than try to see if we could discuss expectations for once we discuss we haven't had it yet. I'm just shooting at the hip just to have a discussion with you about this.
Well, last year we had, in the budget committee, it said try to come under, I believe, 4%, and we both, for different reasons, initially came in considerably higher than that because of the pressures that we were both facing. And but I think, as Mark said, that the budget committee is in effect the tool to give overall guidance. I'd be glad, Norm, you and I can sit down, separately later on, once we start getting a better feel for things.
Tom.
Yeah, I think that I definitely kind of agree with what Mark was saying about adding more structures on might not be the best idea. And it definitely sounds like a lot of the purpose of what the budget committee is to bring a lot of those kind of common issues together into one place where we can talk about them. I think that one of what kind of got me thinking about this problem to begin with, I think is well illustrated by the kind of the road bond issue from last year, where there's a clear need. I think everyone during discussion saw a clear need for a much higher level of funding for either into a bond or into ongoing maintenance. But because it came at a relatively later date, there was a very hard challenge to say, okay, how do we fund this at the level that we think it needs to be funded at, when kind of where our starting point is initially, we need to cut back a bunch of budget. So it's those type of issues where they have a very long tail, and they can extend far out into the future. And if we do certain things now, it can change what happens then. And if we don't do certain things now, we have to start planning for certain things in the future. Those are the types of issues that I see that I think the budget committee can have a much larger impact kind of in the initial planning phase.
And the town has a CIP committee and has a schedule that goes out, what is it, Don, 15 years or 20 years?
It goes out 20 with, the relative closeness of 3 or 4 is what we really focus on, but it is out 20 for a lot of things like fire trucks or whatever.
Right, and that is, presented to the budget committee, so you understand what the pressures are we're coming under.
No, right, and I think we all understand the pressures. The question is for example, didn't last year, didn't we decrease the bond because of some of those budget pressures, when a lot of those budget pressures are not just coming from the town side, they're also coming from the school side, because it is one single tax rate at the end of the day. It's one single amount of money that we have to pay at the end of the day. So if stuff gets stretched in one direction, we might have to not stretch it in the other direction. And I think that there might be a capital improvement plan, but if the plan is to be putting those into bonds and then we're decreasing the amount of bonds, maybe it make more sense to actually push more money into the capital improvement plan now, even though that's an increase. It's like those types of things where it's like there could be some interesting things that we can do earlier on, beyond just kind of the capital improvement plan.
And Tom, not disagreeing with you, certainly on the select board side, we we look at what's coming down the road, and we try to do as much as we can to try to levelize the tax rate over a period of time.
I think whatever we can do to possibly get closer to the planning portion of what the common rating of the needs are in the town, the easier it is to sell everybody on what that total approach is. And Norm is bringing forward a totally different approach where it's not the school against the town. It's whatever the voters are going to end up saying at the end of this thing as to what their priorities are. And if you start back, now with trying to merge those priorities by groups in the school and the groups in the town budget, trying to prioritize what the needs are for the total town, it's an easier thing to understand than coming into the budget committee with a time constraint of trying to decide what the priorities are. And everybody's coming at each other from their own perspective. If we start that early on, where we're really looking at what is the big picture for out 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's a much easier sell, I think, at the end, because everybody's on the same boat at that point. One year, the school may need more money for whatever, which they just did with a $10 million bond. Whatever the town might need, and the elephant there is still the roads. What now is the transition point of where the priorities go? I think the earlier we start that trying to do that process, the better off we'll all be.
Do you think we could, there's capital projects and there's operating budgets, and they all add up to, they all contribute to the tax rate, but they're pretty different in terms of the length, the duration, especially the advanced thinking and planning. And I wonder if one step in the right direction would be to invite both the town and the school, whether it's I think maybe at our next budget committee meeting, to run us through. It's sort of a two-part ask that I have in mind. Oh, first of all, I want to just acknowledge that Ginny has joined the meeting. Thank you, Ginny. I'm not sure how long you were in the attendees section, but I finally noticed and brought you over to the to the main meeting. So welcome. But to invite the select board and the school to present, at least, with a 3-year look, what big ticket items or investments are being contemplated. And that could be through the CIPs that you have, or other things that you may have an inkling are coming down the pike. Contracts, renegotiations, whatever it may be. That would be helpful early on. It might raise some of the things that we want to dig into more, like Thomas was saying. If we see, okay, the select board is thinking about the next road bond or whatever it may be next year, the year, we want to learn more about that. We want to dig into that more, or things where there's potentially some synergy or conflict between what the school wants to do and the town wants to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, because I definitely see what you're saying, Ken, that it's maybe not like if you have a good process for how you structure and build your budget, it might not be a good idea to add more additional structure into, or changing the structure of it. But if there's some way that we can start with more information, so that initial guidance that's coming from the budget committee isn't just hit this percent, we can have a lot more information to say, these are the types of things we recommend, and these are the types of things that we don't.
Okay, on the, for instance, on the CIP committee, CIP spreadsheet, I wouldn't have any update probably for a few months, as opposed to what you've already seen.
Yeah, I think part of it, Ken, is that if you're in that, you have a greater familiarity than any of us do.
Except maybe Dawn.
You know, like I don't remember when you presented that, but a lot's happened in the last few months.
Mhm.
So refreshing ourselves, just refreshing us as a budget committee on the CIP, it doesn't matter that if it's not new. And then being able to layer us as a budget committee, layer that in with what the school is telling us as best as they can see of big ticket items the next 3 years. I think that'd be just helpful to refresh us as we go into the budget process. So it doesn't matter to me if it's new. It's more for those of us who are not in it as regularly because we're not on the school board or the select board. It helps us on the budget committee to frame the budget conversation.
Okay, that makes sense. They could show, have the spreadsheets provided and say, okay, let's go through them. We're looking at getting a new ambulance in 3 years, so we want to put 50,000 a year in to cover that in advance, or fire truck or whatever. That, I think that's what you're saying, Mark.
Yeah, and I guess I would love to hear from others. So this is me just sort of trying to respond to what I'm hearing as an interest in some earlier information, particularly around big ticket items that we can think about. Are there areas where we want to explore more, dig in more, or see where there are synergies or tensions?
Can I ask a similar but different question? In terms of if you're going through your process of building the budget, what type of information can we provide before you start that would be the most helpful? Like what type of guidance can we help that would be the most helpful so that when we get back, we're starting from a good place?
Well, as I said last year, the budget committee gave guidance to both boards. We'd like to see less than a 4% increase. And then the select board, said, okay, let's plan for less than a 4% increase, which we didn't match, but, that was, helpful guidance to try to work from.
See, we haven't had a discussion at the table, at the board level, how we're going to be implementing the budget process yet, or what our thought process is for an increase in the budget. This is our first budget. Make that clear, our first budget. The other one was, the old crew. And now we have an opportunity where we have 4 brilliant minds at the table that could really help with looking at this budget, changing its format. My thought process for this discussion is to have you guys understand things sooner rather than me bringing something in January. I really struggle with all due respect, it's your job and all that, taking money off an operating account where we could have had a discussion in October, November, or whatever that time window is on why we're at this number. And maybe we have a discussion and we can agree, okay, this is something that the school needs. That's just me. I think I'm looking for an ongoing discussion through the budget process, because everyone here has their own opinion. Everyone has their own experience, and I value it very much. That if I could bring back to the board or the finance committee, they're happy to look at it, I'm sure. I guess, Mark, and I agree with Tom, and having an ongoing discussion with the budget committee throughout the whole process, instead of just, here's a presentation, maybe try and make an ongoing discussion. So maybe there's something that we can answer thoroughly instead, as if we did with the presentation on a couple of things. It's our goal to be able, it's my goal to really communicate to you what the board's trying to accomplish, and that's a sustainable tax rate for meeting the needs of our students and our taxpayers. You guys can mute me next time I talk. I'm sorry. Mute Norm.
Yeah, I think that's going to be welcome, Norm. And I don't have, I have no interest in criticizing sort of what's happened in the past. I think there are reasons for the timeline and around when things were understood. And I'll be really curious to see, given what we've heard in the past about the reasons why the budgeting process gets started, sort of late in terms of our ability to weigh in, how you are able, what are the ways in which this new board is able to accelerate some of the conversation, at least. I think that'd be great. I feel pretty confident in saying that everyone on this committee will appreciate that based on the conversations we've had over the years. And, I guess the question that's been, that Ken, you raised is around, does the budget committee want to provide early guidance? I think that's an open question that's worth some discussion, not necessarily a decision tonight, but maybe at least some initial discussion from folks on thoughts on that. So last year, we said we thought that we advised the boards to keep the budgets to 4% or lower increase on the tax rate. It was I can't remember the exact language, but it was a 4%, increase on, impact on the tax rate, I think. And they ended up in wildly different places. But I think that boards felt like there was some value and they could have that as a benchmark. It was a number that I wouldn't say it was pulled out of thin air. It was, our understanding that there were some things that were likely to go up because there were contracts being renegotiated. There are just certain things beyond the control of either the school board or the select board that increase from year to year. So we were, as a majority, we weren't comfortable with recommending a level budget. I don't want to say nobody was, but as a majority, we didn't. So yeah, so I think it would be helpful to have some conversation on, how people, or is there interest in trying to do that again, and how might we go about developing either a number or some ranges?
I can go first if you guys would like. My thought process is I want to have an opportunity to discuss it with the four board members. Because for me, I think that I'd be very interested to be able to hear what they have to say. I mean, we have a pretty good feel, with our CIP since it's being constructed. We also know what our bond is moving forward for the next 20 years. So we understand that it's going to be level debt at 80 cents. I'm not comfortable right now given an amount because I want to be able to look at everything. I want to be able to come to the committee saying, Andrea and Jim have provided me with this CIP amount for repair and maintenance because we are really sticking to our CIP planning. We really are. I've instructed the facilities committee to provide us with CIP for this facilities project so we're able to maintain our roofs, able to put that into our plan. And so we're not looking at a bond again. I'm very comfortable with that. I would prefer to have the discussion at the board table first to get a feel for what their expectations are and present possibly to you guys, from that discussion, what we're looking at, and be open with you guys saying, this is what we have for the bond. This is what we have for the CIP. This is what we're budgeting for vehicle. Basically the warrants you saw last year, if we decide to go down that path, we have not come to an agreement with the teachers for a potential contract for next year. If I was to start the budgeting process, potentially, I would use the figure from last year as a placeholder, potentially, if they were to agree, just that number, because that's something that I would do to just start a discussion. But we don't know. We haven't reached an agreement, but I would prefer to have a discussion with the board and then present to you guys with what we discussed, because I think we need to give this board a chance.
Other thoughts? Steve?
Norm, do you know, and I'm putting you on the spot, with the current budget, what percentage next year increase will there be due just to the level payment on the bond? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact number, but it was $123,000, I believe is what it was for, 123.
I have that.
Yeah,
I have that number. Hold on. It'll take me a second to get it, but
yeah. So 122,265 is what the phase bond savings was.
But that was a partial payment. That wasn't the
Yeah,
full.
so let me explain a little bit. So we did take out a partial bond for the facilities project. You know, I think it was 4.5. And what ended up happening was we were able to save on the project for next year, 122,000 as opposed to, I think the initial bond was at 400,000. So a couple things in that. So with the facilities project, our goal is to get the kids into school. Make no mistake, that's an important element for our students. The other idea that I have discussed at the facilities committee meeting was if the schools are shut down, I mean, we're not going back. If that happens, does it make sense for this board to go back and get the second half of the bond? Because that would play an important equation into the tax rate potentially, because we would be able to speed up the facility project a lot faster, which we would save. I asked the facilities committee and they said it would be $20,000 per month or so of them not working at the school's location. So we'd save it by speeding it up, but we would need to be able to get an additional bond run. And this hasn't been discussed at the board yet. This was at the facilities meeting. But could we swing it? I don't know. It affects the tax rate significantly if we were to do it maybe sooner than later.
And I lost the exact number of the bond payment, but I think the budget increase just due to the increase in the bond payment was on the order of about 1%.
Yeah,
it was in that neighborhood.
So that
122,000.
going forward, that's going to be a very important number because the public perception is, that we're already starting at a 1% increase. So
yeah.
And Steve, I appreciate you talking about that, because when we talk about increase, we need to discuss everything, because you can give direction and say we want to see a 2% increase on the operating account, but then when you have all these warrants and all these additional expenses, it adds up pretty quickly. And that's why I feel it's important that when the board has their discussion, they're going to have to look at every single place that ends up being what the tax rate is and sharing that discussion with you guys. I mean, we know we are doing level debt 80 cents, and that's a lot. That's a lot, for the next 20 years. But I think it's important to realize that no matter when you move into Hopkinton, you're paying exactly the same as at the end. So it kind of works out fairly for the taxpayer, in my opinion.
I guess my point is the headwinds that we were sailing in this last year, as far as the school budget, haven't just gone away because the budget's been passed. So the communication, and not just the school board, but the budget committee, it's going to have to be early and often. And
Well, we know what we have, right? We know we're going to know exactly what the tax rate is for the bond. The community voted for that. We need to see it through. That's just my opinion. And you have to build around that and instruct to your superintendent, what you're looking for an increase, and that's what the board needs to have a discussion about. They need to determine what amount they're looking for from their superintendent at a certain window, and he'll bring it back to the board, and then it'll be a discussion of what needs to happen. And I think we're starting to have the discussion in our next finance committee meeting, because it's our job, me and Rob, to look at this budgeting process and get it started sooner. And I'm glad I can bring that to you guys, because I think your opinion will help with the process a lot smoother.
Norm, I think there's a piece that I don't know if you've mentioned it, that I just want to surface.
Please.
And I've shared it with other school board members. It's hard to, because of the point that Steve raised, which is you're starting already with a 1% increase just to accommodate the bond payment, which the town has approved. But in a sense, that's good. And you show up next year and there's already 1% for the bond payment, and people are going to have to contemplate that as they're looking at everything else that's coming forward in both the school and the town. I find it a little hard to think about how do you flatten the curve of the school budget, which you did this year at some cost, but without the corollary. It's not just a money issue. It's not just this finance committee going to the board and saying, we think we should aim for a 2% increase or whatever it is. It's like, are there alternative education models and approaches that we need to consider as a board so that we can provide the same or a similar quality and caliber of education without a 5 to 7% budget increase every year?
No, you're correct. And
I'm just wondering if that conversation is happening, because
No.
that's where guidance from the budget committee, and I'm not sure I'm advocating for it. I just want to share it. Like if the budget committee said, we think on the net, all warrant articles, all inclusive, you should not be higher than X percent, whatever that percent is.
Yeah.
That's going to help force, compel the school board to say, okay, well, if we need to try to stick to that, what does that mean for how we think about our educational models?
Yeah.
And I'm not suggesting that's easy. I think it's really hard. But I do think that's what some of the new board members have indicated that they were willing and open to do.
And I think a lot of them want to be think outside the box. And I think a lot of them, I've mentioned VLAX as, one of them. I'm a firm believer of, I love the idea of having our students have an opportunity to have their associate's degree when they graduate from Hopkinton. And you can do that through VLAX, from my understanding. I'm really curious to I'm really interested in having a conversation with the board. I mean, we've been really busy with COVID-19. I hope you guys understand that, but it's something that we want to address sooner than later. And I was, the meaning for this discussion, I guess, I think you guys have brought it together, is having these discussions sooner than later, an ongoing process, and being able to learn from you guys and bring it back to the board and see what we can do to work together.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it definitely more communication from the school and the town before we get to that point is definitely good. And it sounds like from what you're saying, having some sort of basic guidance from us before you get into the planning process is also really helpful. So then I guess back to Mark's original question of kind of the meetings for the rest of the year, what are the things then that we can do, and what are the things we want to do before the end of the year, before we get to that point? What can we do?
Well, Mark was, talking about getting a better understanding where the town CIP spreadsheet is now and what our needs are. And, I would think, well, maybe for our next meeting, we could just put that on the agenda, that's an item that I'll address.
Yeah, so let me ask the budget committee, would you like, I mean, I don't know that we need a formal vote at this point, but maybe just some head nodding or not, or shaking. Would you like to ask both the town and the school board to share their latest CIPs or thinking on major capital investments and other big ticket items that they're aware of at the next budget committee meeting?
Yes,
Okay, so I'm hearing.
absolutely.
And Ken, it sounds like you're willing to do that. And Norm, I think we're going to make that request of the budget committee is going to make that request of the school board, and you will provide what you feel like you can.
And Mark, just to clarify, what I was proposing is to explain the existing CIP spreadsheet. I don't know if there are going to be some new needs that may come up that I haven't heard about yet.
Understood.
If need be, Mr. Sanko, could I invite someone potentially from the committee to discuss the CIP if need be, or I can do it, whatever you're comfortable with.
Oh, I think that's your call. We leave that
Okay.
to you, whoever you think
Okay.
makes the most sense. If they're able
Okay.
to join us, that's great. Doesn't have to be.
On my side, Norm, I always have Dawn here.
I'm familiar with the CIP, but sometimes come from the horse's mouth is a lot easier because they're the one that's been building on it. Like I can explain more about the facilities project, which I will bring you guys some more information about. I want to do that every meeting on what we're doing, what the spending is, and where we are with things. So I want to commit that to you guys that we're in this together, the facilities project, and I'm happy to share as much as I can with you guys.
Great. Anything else? I want to talk about the meeting schedule, but is there any other topics that people want to bring up at this point? Okay. So we have had traditionally a meeting schedule for the fall, at least, of the second Wednesday of the month. And then I would invite Janet to remind me, if you can, we then transition to, I think, bi-weekly in December, or we have, and then we have often had to do weekly in January because
Yes.
of the crunch. So I guess I want to maybe know first if we want to commit to monthly in October and November, second Wednesday of the month. And then we can also look at twice in December at this point. And when we know a little bit more about what looks to be the timing for the town and the school, we can revisit January. So I guess that's what I wanted to suggest, but I'm open. I don't feel like I have the best approach here necessarily. Tammy.
I believe we're scheduled for the second Wednesday of every month unless it's discussed in a meeting that it has to be sooner than that.
Okay. So it'd be adding meetings in December and January to essentially the pre-existing schedule of second Wednesday of every month.
I just think it's part of the protocol.
You're saying that is the case, or you're
I'm
saying
just saying that once the Janet may be able to input, but I believe that the budget committee is scheduled for the second Wednesday of every month unless it's determined in a meeting that it has to be sooner than that because of school budget or extra things coming up. Don can probably input that too.
Well, I think part of it was the second Wednesday of every month, October and November. Then December was when we always started with the school budget.
Right.
And the town budget came earlier than that, and early enough so that we weren't putting in extra meetings, I don't believe, for the town. It was just the school. And that's, I'm hoping that the school board will start early on their budget, which they have said they want to do, so that we can be feeling that all year and not just have the cramp in December, which is a busy month for a lot of people, and have the extra meetings. I always like to go to the school board meeting figuring they're discussing the budget, and the more I hear the budget of each group, the more it sinks in. So anyway, yes, we can figure the second Wednesday of every month, and then if we see we need additional, we can add them in afterwards.
I can,
But
I can,
al- But also Neil is the one that puts that schedule together for the whole year because certain rules and regulations have to be met as far as the budgets are concerned, and so much time in between this and that. And so he's probably working on that now, and that would be a big help to you, Mark, to get that schedule from Neil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll request that. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I totally agree with Janet. And I mean, I've been talking to Neil and he's just been buried. So really hasn't had time to turn to these things. I'm wondering if we can just schedule the second Wednesday of October and November and stop at that for now.
Yeah,
And it's my impression that the meeting in October, we will bring to this, the big tickets, capital improvement and all that stuff, kind of as like a little presentation.
Yep.
I just want to
Right.
plan accordingly for the board.
Yeah, and I plan on the same.
Okay, so let's stick with second Wednesday of the month for now. We will adjust or decide if we need to add additional meetings in December and January as the process unfolds. And also as we learn more from Neil, which I think we could ask Neil also, and Tammy, maybe we should capture this. If Neil could join us at our next meeting and perhaps he can run through some of those dates like he did last year about when we need to have town meeting by, when we need to have, in the hopes that we might actually have in-person meetings next year, which I think is a hope, definitely
Yeah,
not
I
a
think-
certainty.
I believe that comes later. I think October and November is basically budget committee, school board, and the precincts. And the school board and the town take over the minutes, so I can go back and look at them. But keep in mind, the second Wednesday in October. I'm just looking at the date, sorry.
That's the 14th.
Okay, October 14th.
However, the second Wednesday in November is the 11th, which is Veterans Day. So I don't know if that's a problem.
I'll let you
I
guys decide.
Yeah, so I don't know what the town sort of practice is around holding meetings on holidays. It generally
That must be a
seem
holiday
advisable
for
to
the
me,
town.
I guess I would be inclined to suggest that we not hold it on a holiday.
oh yeah, right.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So, okay, so that would mean in November, we can,
The week before is election day.
yeah, that's not going to be a good day. I mean, it might
The
be a
week
good day depending on.
After that, maybe I don't have any control. So either the 10th, the day before, or possibly the 18th, my 43rd anniversary, but whatever.
I think you really have to let Neil figure this out because he
Yeah,
sees
no,
the big
and yeah,
picture.
true.
So I will send Neil a note about that date in November.
Yeah, the
and
11th is
for a
the crazy one.
recommendation and
Okay.
get that back out.
All right.
I'll also be talking to him tomorrow so I can get a better idea of when he thinks he'll be getting around to trying to put together a whole schedule.
And Mark, we're going to be continue moving forward with Zoom, correct, for the time being?
That's my operating assumption. You all can let me know if you think otherwise, but I haven't had an in-person inside meeting with anybody for any
No,
reason for a long time. Have to
We are potentially in the next couple weeks supposed to have our first one, but nothing's been set in stone. So, but I mean, our kids are going back, so lead by example.
Yeah, I don't quite see it that way, to be honest. I
Well-
mean, there is a lot of, there are reasons educationally why the school is bringing kids back. I'm not sure that us meeting in person is leading by example or the
No,
school
no, no.
board.
I'm talking about for us. You know, we have to, in my opinion, stand behind, you know, we can't, in my opinion, support the boards in person for us if we're sending kids back for learn, of course. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I will respectfully disagree with you, my friend. on that
All
front.
right. No problem.
I think you'd be setting a better example to not do that unless you feel like you have to meet in person. But
Yeah.
that's
But like,
offline.
Like I probably would not be able to come to the open meetings until I know what's going on more with this COVID deal in this fall. Because I've been very protected all during this, and I'm just not anxious to throw that out the window at this point. So I do like the Zooms in that respect.
Other perspectives on that?
I share Janet's concern.
Any other thoughts? Otherwise, I think we'll plan on Zoom for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, any other business tonight? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Hold on, hold
Moved
on,
by
hold
Ken,
on.
seconded by Norm.
And
To
maybe.
comply with our guidelines, I'm going to do a roll call. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
Steve,
Steve is a yes.
Norm,
Norm Gupel's a yes.
Ken,
Ken Traum, yes.
Don,
Yes.
Janet,
Janet Kruzaniak, yes.
Thomas,
Thomas Diploma, yes.
Virginia,
Yes.
and Mark is a yes. Just keeping it formal, Ginny, for the minute. Okay, thank you all. I think we are adjourned until Wednesday, October 14th. And be safe and stay well.
You too, guys.
Thank you.
I will.
Everybody.
Celtics is on right now, so
Yes.
I'm gonna rush home to see that.